Elizabeth Scott decided she would not be a party to this, and she withdrew from the picture. And they scouted around all over town, and I know because I was very close with Joan Bennett in those days. She was offered, this one was, everybody was offered this part. So they were desperate. And finally someone said, "What about Jane Greer?"
Now you've done it. What'd you have to get me into it for?
Into what? I don't know what I got myself into.
The Inspector General's office. You're going to have some explaining to do.
Mitchum was sentenced to 60 days in jail, followed by 2 years probation. The court made a special dispensation that he could do some of the shooting for the big steal before serving his sentence.
It did have an effect on your career, did it not, though?
Probably, yeah, it made it a bit more circumstantial. Well, I couldn't play, for instance, Eagle Scouts or Baptist preachers. But I tell you one thing, it certainly enlisted an enormous number of new fans.
RKO was so nervous about how the cinema-going public would react to Mitchum's misdemeanor that they sent him on a nationwide promotional tour to test public reaction.
He acted like Mitchum, and he served his sentence and came out, and everybody thought that was the end of Mitchum's career. Well, it wasn't at all. Mitchum, everybody was kind of fascinated by this. Now, maybe if it had been Farley Granger or some attractive young guy with a different kind of image, it would have been a different thing. But Mitchum, they like Mitchum to be a little dangerous, a little reckless, a little the kind of things that he was. That's the character he played, and that's the kind of person he was.
Meanwhile, the team of Adrian Scott and Edward Dmytryk were continuing to develop the film noir vein, and they were encouraged by the liberal Dory Sherry, now RKO production chief, to include a social dimension to their stories. Crossfire dealt with the concealment of a racially motivated murder.
You ought to look at the casualty list sometime. There are a lot of funny names there, too.
Hmm?
I said Monty was illiterate. I said he ought to read more. I was just philosophizing.
I'm not interested in philosophy. I'm trying to solve a murder.
And we had to agree to, as I say, make it very cheaply. Now, I will also, this is interesting, by the way, I think from a technical point of view, I wanted to make it very well. So I looked into the records, and I found that normally on the average picture at that time, 80% of the time was taken in preparation and lighting and all that kind of thing, and perhaps 20 minutes with rehearsal and with getting the film. I wanted to reverse that. So in the first place, I had to get a cameraman who was willing to light very quickly. And as a photographer will understand, it was a lot faster to light the people and then throw a couple of big shadows on the wall, and you had your thing. In the old days, if they were to light a wall, every fixture would be lit, would have its own three-point lighting. In this case, we didn't have the time. So we got that kind of shadowy, high-contrast lighting and used wide-angle lenses to get character, not for depth of focus, because that I hate, but to get different kinds of character. In Crossfire, I started out with Bob Ryan with a 50-millimeter lens because I wanted him to be perfectly normal. As we gradually went along, I went to a 40, to a 35, and eventually in the last third of the picture, everything I shot with him was with a 25, to that slight subliminal distortion, which made him a different kind of a character. And that's a very essential part of film noir, which most people don't know. I shot that in 20 days, which was a B picture schedule by anything. And I had Robert Young, who got at that time $150,000. I had Robert Ryan, I had Robert Mitchum, plus another cast, and we had a budget of $500,000. So you can imagine about almost $400,000 of that went into cast alone, not counting producer, director, writer, and all that. So I had less than $100,000 with which to make the picture.
Now, you were in Crossfire, which was the last film Edward Dmytryk and Adrian Scott made at RKO. And, of course, the late 40s were difficult times for some people. Were you aware of trouble brewing?
Well, I probably was a bit more aware of it than they were. And, having worked as a longshoreman and done things like that, and written for speeches for labor leaders. And I would see Eddie Dmytryk sitting there reading, I guess, the Daily Worker or People's World. It was at a time when it was sort of smart, sort of chic to be, to call yourself a communist. If you made upwards of $1,000 a week, it was rather chic to be for the working man.